Hi, and welcome back to Just the Facts, ma'am. It's January 16th, 2025. I hope everyone had really joyous holidays and that the new year is looking good. Please excuse my scratchy voice. I have a little case of bronchitis that yesterday I thought was possibly going to kill me, but today I am feeling much better. So please hang in there with me. The reason I'm not waiting until I'm totally recovered is because today's topic is timely and I want to get it out there on time. And that is, I'm going to talk about flag etiquette. And that specifically is when and how to display the American flag. And it's timely because, as I'm sure you all know, currently all American flags are supposed to be flown half staff for 30 days to honor the passing of President Jimmy Carter, our 39th president. He died December 29th. So, per federal law called the Flag Code, President Biden ordered all flags to be half staff through sunset on January 28th. And also, per law, anytime that the American flag is half staff, all other flags have to be half staff. So, state, organizations, sports, personal, whatever, except in one really specific exception, which I'll tell you at the end of this video, is the only time that any flag can be above the American flag. The vast majority is, when the American flag's half staff, all other flags have to be half staff. So anyway, so 30 days honoring Jimmy Carter. However, Inauguration Day is coming up in the US. That's always January 20th. So that obviously falls within that 30-day time frame. And so there's been discussion of, well, what's going to happen? Do flags stay half staff? Can they be raised? Who makes that decision? What are the rules? So jumping right into that. Initially, in 1923, there was an official proclamation about essentially how to display the flag. That was then signed into law in 1942 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt was president, and it's called the Flag Code, U.S. Code, Title 4, Chapter 1. And in it, again, it states upon the death of a president, 30 days of lowering the flag. It also says that the flag is encouraged to be flown every day as long as the conditions are correct. That is, only during the hours of sunlight, unless it's well illuminated, and then it can be flown 24 hours a day, and only in good weather conditions, unless it's an all-weather flag. But it goes on to say that if it's not going to be flown every day, there are certain days that it's really encouraged to fly it, and one of those is Inauguration Day. However, there's no language that says it has to be flown at full height, just that it needs to be flown. So come Inauguration Day on Monday, the flags will be half staff until President-elect Trump becomes President Trump again, and he has the power to potentially change that. There is precedent to have an inauguration with that when the flags are being flown at half staff without changing it at all. And that was in 1973, President Nixon was being sworn in for his second term of office when the flags were half staff to honor President Truman, who had died December 26th of 1972. So his 30-day period was going to run through sunset of January 25th. And Inauguration Day came and went. There was no change to the flag. They were all flown, but they were flown half staff. In fact, on January 22nd, 2 days later, President Johnson, so Lyndon B. Johnson, died, and President Nixon honored him with another 30-day proclamation to fly the flags at half staff through February 21st. However, there is precedent now to raise the flag during that 30-day period, and that was the same time frame. President Nixon, on February 12th, 1973, ordered that the flags be flown full height because that was the day that the first American POWs were being released from Vietnam. So as president, he had the power to order that the flags be raised to honor that momentous occasion. But then the next day, he ordered that they be lowered again for another 8 days to give President Johnson his full 30-day memorial. So come Monday, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Once Trump is President Trump again, he can order the flags to be raised for the rest of that day. There's some precedent for that, I suppose he could order them to be raised and not lowered again, and thus President Carter doesn't get his full 30 days. That would be unprecedented, but again, it's within the scope of the presidential powers. And this is a law that doesn't have any recourse. It's an example of a law that doesn't have any recourse, meaning there's you can't be punished, you can't be held legally accountable. So there's that. So I want to be really diligent about trying to keep these episodes short and sweet and to the point and single topic. So if you want to leave me here, that's what I wanted to present to you. However, I want to encourage you to stay because I have 7 really interesting flag facts. But it's going to take me a couple more minutes to do it. Okay, so not in any particular order. Number 7 is, technically speaking, half-mast and half-staff are not the same thing, even though they're usually used interchangeably. Half-mast really only applies to a maritime vessel, right? Because that's where a mast is on a boat or a ship. So half-staff is a flagstaff is a flagpole. So on land, it's only ever half-staff. Number 6 is our current flag with 50 stars in the Union. That's what that blue area is called, where the flag, where the stars are, is called the Union. That was made official in August of 1959 by President Eisenhower, because earlier in 1959, both Alaska and Hawaii became states, so we needed to add stars to the Union to honor Alaska and Hawaii being a state, and that officially went into effect July 4th, 1960. Number 5, and I'm just going to read this to you here out of the flag code, is the flag should never be used for advertising purposes in any manner whatsoever. It should not be embroidered on such articles as cushions or handkerchiefs. Tell me that doesn't sound like 1923 language. Printed or otherwise impressed on paper napkin or boxes, or anything that is designed for temporary use and discard. So keep that in mind when you're shopping for Memorial Day or July 4th barbecue plates and napkins. Number 4 is on Memorial Day, which is the last Monday in May. Flags are supposed to be flown half-staff only until noon, and then they're supposed to be raised full height. Number 3, and this is such an American thing, we don't dip our flag for nothing. That is in the flag code, that the flag is not to be dipped to any person, country, or thing. But it started before it was made law. It was started in the 1908 Olympics in London, and the American flag bearer was Ralph Rose. He was a shot putter, and he was Irish-American, and he didn't dip the flag, presumably in protest of the English monarchy. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, then and today encourages countries to dip their flag to the host country flag in honor and thanks of them being the hosts. In 2 Olympics subsequent to 1908, in Sweden in 1912, and then in Paris in 1924, we did dip the American flag. But prior to the Olympics in Berlin in 1936, the U.S. Olympic Committee made policy that we're not going to dip our flags because we were not going to show any kind of honor or respect to Adolf Hitler. And then, of course, 6 years later, in 1942, that language was put into the flag code. So Olympics or otherwise, we don't ever dip our flag. Number 2, you might wonder, is flag burning illegal in the U.S.? And the answer is no. Anyone who remembers the 80s or has studied law might be familiar with Texas versus Johnson, which was a case when a man named Gregory Lee Johnson burned the U.S. flag on the stairs of the Republican National Convention, hello, Sasha, in Dallas, and was arrested and convicted because Texas at the time had a law against burning the flag. And he served a year in jail and had to pay $2,000. But his appeals process went forward, and finally in 1989, it came in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they overturned it as an unconstitutional law. He was protected that freedom of expression under the First Amendment freedom of speech rights. Congress didn't like that. So later in 1989, they passed the Flag Protection Act and criminalized federally burning of the flag with punishment of fines and or 1 year in jail. And so just after midnight, when that law took effect, two separate groups, one in Seattle and one in Washington, D.C., burned the flag in protest, and they were arrested. Because this had just been seen by the Supreme Court, it warranted expedited review, and those two groups were batched together and brought back in front of the Supreme Court. And perhaps not surprisingly, the Supreme Court said, hey, nothing's changed, still unconstitutional. So federally, still, that's the precedent. Flag burning is not illegal. And what they said was, even though they certainly recognize the flag is a really important national symbol, what it actually symbolizes is not destroyed when the flag gets burned. Congress, however, still was trying to get that changed, and so has tried a couple of different times to make a constitutional amendment to make flag burning a crime. And in 1995, it was called the Flag Desecration Amendment, and it passed the House. So remember that Congress has two houses. One is the House of Representatives and one is the Senate. It passed the House. It didn't get enough votes in the Senate. And it went back a couple more times. Most recently in 2006, again, passed the House and didn't pass the Senate by one vote. So almost. One of the future episodes of Just the Facts, Ma'am, will be explaining what it takes to get a constitutional amendment. It's really hard. Okay, and then the number one, and then flag burning, though, you may be a little bit confused at this point because you're like, wait a second, federally it's illegal, but in my state, or federally it's not illegal, but in my state it is. And like in Colorado, we have a law on the books right now that says burning the American flag or burning the Colorado state flag is a crime. It's a class 3 misdemeanor. However, if somebody were to get arrested on that, as soon as a lawyer got a hold of it, they would cite the federal precedent and the charges would be dropped. Because, thanks to the supremacy clause of the Constitution, federal law takes precedent over state law when those laws are in conflict. Okay, and then number one, when can a flag fly above the American flag? And this is in the flag code, and it's been there since 1942. The language is a little bit updated or outdated, but that is a church pennant, and a pennant is like that pointy triangular flag, can be flown above the American flag when a naval chaplain is performing services on a naval vessel. Now, at the time, it said church pennant because there was only the Christian cross on a pennant recognized in the chaplaincy. Since then, 4 different faiths are officially recognized, and so there are 4 naval pennants that goes along with the shoulder boards, the epaulets that chaplains wear according to their faith. So that's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist. So at sea, when a chaplain of any of those faiths is conducting services, the pennant that aligns with their faith can be, doesn't have to be, but can be flown above the American flag. So there's everything that you might want to know about flag etiquette. As always, the references are in the link below, as is a link to the flag code. I think it's really interesting. If you have a minute, you might want to read through that, as are the updated graphs, the prices of gas, milk, and eggs. Okay, thank you for hanging in there with me, and I'll see you next month.